to be. So we have Gloria Faraone, who is an assistant professor at San Diego State University. She also was a 2022 Summer Institute alumni. We have Mohsen Amjadian, who is an assistant professor of civil engineering at the University of Texas in the Rio Grande. We have Stephanie Pilkington. She's an assistant professor. I'm sorry, both Mohsen and Stephanie are also Summer Institute alumni. Stephanie is also the user forum vice president for NHERI, and she is at the University of North Carolina, Charlotte. We have David Prevatt, who is a professor in structural engineering at the University of Florida, who is obviously part of NHERI. And David Roueche is an assistant professor of civil engineering at Auburn University, who was highly recommended by Jordan, who is the secretary of the NHERI Graduate Student Council, who mentioned forensic engineering and sent all sorts of people a buzz about that. So with my short, very brief introduction, I'm going to start with Gloria. If you would, again, share your name, your position, your university, the field that you're in, and then why you chose to work in the academy.
Okay, hi everyone. I'm Gloria Faraone. I'm an assistant professor at San Diego State University. I'm originally from Italy, so I did all my bachelor and master in Italy, and then I came to the US for the PhD. I did my PhD at UCSD, and I managed to stay in San Diego for all my time in the US. So I did PhD, and now I'm still in San Diego for the assistant professorship position. Robin, can you please put on the slide?
I can.
Okay, because I forgot what,
okay.
what I need to say. Okay, yeah. So name, Gloria Faraone, position, assistant professor, University, San Diego State University. Field is structural engineering. So I did my PhD on structures and non-structural components. And my research is based on earthquake engineering. And why did I choose to work in the academy? That's a very good question, because it's the best job you can find. I'm joking. No, I really love the lifestyle in academia. I love doing research and spending time with students in the classroom, outside of the classroom. I really love the combination of research and teaching that you can do in the academy. So during the PhD, I really enjoyed my life there, and I wanted to continue somehow and still doing the same thing, but in a different position. So that's how I managed to stay in the academy. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Mohsen, do you want to go next?
You're on mute.
Mohsen, do you want to go next? Thank you, Ali.
Okay. Probably I muted the, sorry. Hello, everyone. Again, my name is Mohsen Amjadian. I am assistant professor in University of Texas, Rio Grande Valley. I moved to Valley last year, 2021. And my field is structural engineering. I got my master in earthquake engineering, but my PhD in structural, but my research totally were generally focused on earthquake engineering. And why I like work in academia, you know, I like research. So, and I like challenging research, and I like to solve a challenging problem in research with in different topic in earthquake engineering or vibration engineering. So I think that was the main reason, but I also like to teach. So that is why I choose to work in academia.
Thank you. I'm going to ask David Prevatt to go next. I'm going to put a separation between the two Davids.
Hi, this is David Prevatt here. I'm a professor of structural engineering at the University of Florida. Also a structural engineer. My primary interest is wind engineering, forensic engineering, and the performance of essentially low-rise buildings. Why did I choose to work in academia? I got a job offer. Plain and simple. I was working in consulting beforehand, and someone offered me a job. Why not?
I love that. And we're probably going to ask you some questions since you have worked on both sides. Stephanie, do you want to share your story with us, please?
Hi, I'm Stephanie Pilkington. I am the break between the Davids, apparently. I am at the University of North Carolina, Charlotte. I'm in a construction department. My research area is focused on community resilience and modeling impacts and recovery from natural hazards, specifically meteorological ones. I chose to go into academia. I actually had a job with the Air Force before I went to graduate school. And I went to graduate school with the express purpose of going into academia. And one of the reasons I did that is because I truly do love teaching. And I'm also very much an idea person, and I love the freedom and creativity that academia gives you to explore different ideas.
And Stephanie is awesome too. She is not just the break between Davids. She is and David Roueche, do you mind introducing yourself?
Sure, thanks, Robin. So I'm David Roueche, assistant professor in civil and structural engineering at Auburn University. That's, if you're not familiar, that's in Alabama. We always get asked this. It's in Alabama, about an hour and a half west of Atlanta. So there you go. As far as why I chose to work in academia, I can echo some of the things that others have said. One was just, I got an offer in academia, and it always enjoyed the just the academic community and the flexibility associated with that, the ability to work on projects that are, impactful and that I can choose in a way for myself which ones I want to work on, and then working with students. I enjoy teaching as well. So similar themes as what you've heard already.
Thank you so much. I'm going to share my screen again. And our first category, because I've broken into several different categories, is education. And I'm going to make this smaller so I can see. And so I've put the questions in chat. So if for some reason you forget what the questions are and would like to go back, you can see them there. But the questions that we were asked were, do you consider working in academia before attending graduate school? What are the most difficult skills to develop for a career in academia? Do you have to teach yourself how to teach? All of you pretty much mentioned that you like to teach. And then how do you know that you are teaching well? So I put all of the educational questions together, and I'm going to open it up and ask that, which 2 or 3 questions would you like to answer? And I'm going to give you the opportunity to share all of your experience and feedback on those questions. Again, we range from a professor to this is our first year. So we're going to get a lot of different perspectives, which is what we were hoping for, so we could share the gamut. But I'm going to let y'all choose who gets to go first.
Maybe I will just jump in quickly here. I think one of the things that I learned is that you're going to find yourself teaching the way you learn. Okay, and that's a good and a bad thing. If you're, depending on your experience, that's exactly how you're going to be teaching. But others aren't going to be necessarily learning the way you have learned most effectively. And you have to formulate your class in an equitable way in which you can reach all students of all backgrounds and all initiatives. You are there for them and not the other way around. So it's important for you to reach out for resources. The universities have resources, and that's essentially where I learned. I had to, take part of ASCE's Exceed workshop as well, a 1-week workshop during the summer. And that's important. I think the most difficult skills to learn are the human ones. Mentoring, supervising of students, and keeping them on track. And I'll leave the rest to the others.
Thank you, David.
I'll kind of jump in there with the last question. Like, how do you know that you are teaching well? one of the ways I gauge that, it's, I know everyone thinks it's probably by the student evaluations, not so much, but one of the ways I gauge that like real time is how involved my class is and how engaged they are and talk back and forth with me, because my lecture style is basically I'm trying to get them to ask the questions so then we can discuss and move forward with the math. And so if they're engaged, and sometimes that involves me like breaking up from the science and doing something a little ridiculous in class and being like, oh, did you see this or that? And if they're really engaged, then I feel like that's how I know I'm teaching well, because then they'll come back and we get to the material, they'll ask questions in that as well.
Thank you.
I can fill in at the first one. Did you consider work in academia before attending grad school? No. That's a true story. No, I didn't. After 5 years of studies in Italy, I was so tired that I didn't want to stay in academia, not even 1 month longer. But then I came to the US. I spent 6 months in San Diego. It was beautiful. The academic environment in the US was amazing. And I decided to stay. I decided to continue with the PhD. So a very long program, if you want to put it this way. It was about 5-6 years of PhD. But it was beautiful, amazing. And that really changed my mind. Year by year, I started learning new things, new experiences, and getting involved with teaching and research was very, very beautiful to me, new and beautiful. And at the end, I decided that was what I really wanted to do. So here I am as a professor today. So it's a journey. I think at least for me, it was a journey. I decided what I wanted to do in a long time.
Thank you for sharing that perspective. And I'm happy to know that not everyone knows what they're going to do before they do it, and that it is for a lot of people a journey.
Of course, yeah.
I'll echo Gloria's perspective to somewhat in that I was very much opposed actually to academia until probably the last maybe 1.5 to 2 years before I graduated, mostly because I perceived the work-life imbalance was just too high, and that was not something that I was going to be able to deal with. And so I was like, nope, that's not for me. And it wasn't until I got a little bit further along, closer to graduation, that I started to consider it. And I know that's one of the specific questions later on, so I won't go into too much detail there. But yeah, I was strongly opposed to it for most of my graduate career. And then I did want to mention just one thought with did you have to teach yourself how to teach a class? And I also echo Dave Prevatt's comment that yes, you learn a lot from your own professors that you learn from, so that's helpful. But I also just wanted to point out that any teaching experience you have in your life can come back and be really helpful in that. So like, for example, during my graduate studies, I helped teach a Sunday school at the church I went to. Never thought that would be a big help. But then when I actually went into teaching a class, yes, the technical content is there and you need to understand it, but so much of being able to teach well is being able to interact with students and be able to keep it fun and engaging and those sort of things. So if you have other ways of getting that experience, even if it's not in a university classroom setting, it's still going to be very helpful for you.
I appreciate you talking about how to bring your personal experience with teaching inside the classroom. I think that's super important. Mohsen, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, sure. I may answer the second question based on my experience. What are the most difficult skills to develop for a career in academia? I think what the first David says about the mentoring is correct. I agree. But I just want also add another specific skill, which I actually specifically I talked about myself needed to develop, was writing paper and proposal, which was quite difficult for me when I started my job, even during my postdoc and PhD. So I think to be able to write a good article and learn how to write abstract introduction, that takes time. And I think that was a good achievement up to this point for me to learn how to write good paper and proposals.
All right, thank you. I'm going to pause real quick and I'm going to say REU interns, do you have any questions that you've now thought of about education, whether it be the education that you're getting and what is needed, or teaching once you become a professor, if that's what you want to do? Is there anyone that wants to pipe up real quick and share a question verbally before we move on to the next category? Okay. The next, writing skills. Yes, you're definitely on track for developing those right now. Someone made a comment directly to me. The next questions, I've gone ahead and put them in chat, but I'm going to share our screen again. For the Academy, I'm going to move this out of the way so I can read. What does your typical workday look like? And this is a question we get a lot, which I know can definitely explain kind of the work-life balance, which is always a big concern of people considering going into the Academy that I have met. Is there a clear balance between conducting research and teaching classes? How does your research tie into your teaching style and the curriculum that you teach? And is it possible to change interest in academia if you've done something different maybe prior to, or even once you get into academia, can you then find new interests while you're there? So again, I'm going to leave it open to you. The questions are in the chat if you need to refer back to them. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing. But who would like to share first?
I'll actually go. I want to answer Anna's question also in the chat. That was, did you want to work at a more teaching university or research university?
Yes, thank you, Anna.
Because I am actually currently at what has typically been a teaching university and has aspirations of becoming an R1 research institution. So I'm kind of seeing the transition period for that. And to be honest, when I applied, I went for tenure track positions because I was honestly just curious if I could get one. Knowing which one you want to work at, though, is really which part of the job do you like the most. I will say at teaching universities, you have heavy class loads. And I know Dr. Prevatt and I have talked about my class load versus at Florida a couple times, where we're just now moving away from our quote unquote tenure track faculty having a 3 class load per semester and trying to get it down to 2. Whereas research universities are probably going to be closer to 2 to 1 because they want you to do more proposal writing and more publications. And so when you're looking at the differences of those two, it's really, what do you want to spend more of your time doing? So I'll kind of pause there.
Awesome. I think those are really important points to put out there now. That's not something that I think a lot of graduate students necessarily know about. Danon also said, do you often connect the material that you teach to your active research, which is one of the questions. So Dr. Prevatt answered it in the chat, but who would like to share next on those questions within academia?
Yes, I would add a thing actually about research in class. Research is not only, to me, it's not only what you learn by like actually doing research. It's not only the results that you get, but it's also the methods and the tools that you need to use. So it's learning how to look for things online, things that you don't know, learn how to read the documents that maybe look very difficult at the beginning, but you need to understand them somehow. So it's teaching yourself how to do these new things that maybe you never thought they existed before, but you need to find a way to find a solution. So research is also learning all these new tools that will help you finding new solutions to problems. So sometimes it's not only referred to the result, the actual result that you get at the end of the process. It's also the process to go there. So in class, I try to teach this, that is not only what you get, but it's also how you get there. So I just wanted to add this.
Thank you.
I'll jump in real quick with the what does your typical workday look like? Just because that was a question I know I had when I was considering academia, and it was a big thing to me. So my typical workday is probably a little bit more, or maybe more structured. And I think it will change for each person. Me with family and all, it tends to be a little bit more structured. So I typically start my day around 5:30 in the morning, and then some days of the week I'll sort of go straight into and just do some, do exercise, things like that. And then the other days I have an early morning writing session. And then generally I get into the office about 8 or 8:30, work till about 5:30 or 6. And then at the end of the day, I may do some, just some reading or things like that, but I typically don't, work late into the night. But again, that's mostly just a family situation with wife and kids. It just works out much better to get an early start to the day rather than working late. But sort of the main point I wanted to make on this was that, I would encourage you to ask a lot of people that, but you're going to get all sorts of different answers because it works differently for everybody. I remember when I first got to Auburn, I went to a session that was talking about like work-life balance and things like that for assistant professors. And it was this professor talking about how, his meetings with grad students would be at 9 o'clock at night and on Saturdays and Sundays and all over the place. But then you heard the full story, and it's because in the morning, he typically didn't start till like 11 in the morning because of other things he was having to do with family. So it's very flexible. And so I just encourage you to not sort of focus on they must be working 16 hours a day because of this. Every story is different, and just try to get as many of them as you can and make what works for you.
I would probably add to that because sometimes what the patterns that you set now are what's going to continue throughout your life, right? When David was as a student at the University of Florida here, he worked at night. Correct me if I'm wrong. You did the midnight shifts at the Gainesville Fitness Gym, yeah? And so you worked. You got off work at 5 a.m. or something like that. You did the homework around that time, and then you came to class, right? And then after that, you were in the lab doing research, and so you had this structure that repeated itself. And so it has worked for David because he, from the get-go, from right now, you have to establish these very important organizational skills that no one is going to tell you how to do or what to do, but these are the things that's going to be the structure upon which you build all the other fancy skills that we're going to be talking about.
Thank you, David.
Yeah, sure. I may answer the last question. Is it possible to change interest in academia? So I think here interest probably means research interest, if I am correct. This actually, I have experience on this. During my PhD, I got my master in earthquake engineering and civil engineering, but during my PhD, I kind of changed my interest to also a research area, which is combination of electrical engineering and civil engineering. So I needed to spend at least 1 or 2 years to study major textbook in electrical engineering. So so I just want to say, based on my experience, yeah, it's possible, but you need time to, based on the new research interest you want to adopt, you need to a period of time to study paper, textbook, to be familiar with that new research topic.
And that doesn't stop. Why am I in Spain? I'm doing that right now, okay? I am changing the outlook of structural engineering from looking at buildings and forces and calculating, stress distribution in a beam, to looking at planning the risks of future societies and how we work. That takes time. Luckily, a month in Spain.
A month in Spain, yes. That's awesome. Go ahead, Stephanie.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to the conversation with what David Roueche was saying about if you ask that question, that first question, your typical workday, what does it look like? You're gonna get different answers. My answer is gonna be very different from his. I tend to work in spurts. So, and it also is different based on whether or not I'm in the semester or in the summer. For example, in the summer, I'm not getting up that early. I will be fully honest, I get up later. During the semester though, I get up earlier because I'm trying to work around my course schedule. But I also tend to do this thing, and that's just how I work, where I will sit down and I've cranked out a paper in a weekend before, just because I work in spurts like that. And the next thing I know, the next 2 days, I'm pretty much like dead. And so it really just depends on how you work. And the beauty of academia is that you can do that. I also don't have kids, so I don't have to plan around those activities. I do have a partner, and I kind of try and plan around, so I'm not always working when he's home. So we have that. But I work a very different schedule because of how my brain works in that sense.
I appreciate you sharing that, because I think that is one of the beauties of academia.
So can I answer Matthew's questions, the last question?
Of course.
Yeah, Matthew asked, what is the topic area of overlap for civil and electrical engineering you mentioned? So in my PhD, during my PhD, I work on developing electromagnetic damper. Damper is a device we use to dissipate energy in civil structures. So because its mechanism based, energy dissipation mechanism is based on electromagnetism. So I studied some books, textbook in magnetism. So kind of I needed to understand the concept of magnetism, and I used those theories I learned, and for developing some formulation to describe the behavior of that device.
Thank you. With that, we're going to go on to our next topic, which is professional challenges. And I'm going to put those in the chat as well, so you can refer back to them. But do you feel it's important to conduct research with undergraduates rather than only graduate students? If that is the case, why? How do you maintain a work-life balance during the day and throughout the year with research, teaching students? We've touched on this, but I know that this is a very important question that gets asked a lot. So expanding on that a little bit more would be appreciated. And then what are the requirements for publishing and teaching for your position? We've touched on that, but if you have additional information, again, that's something that is not always shared with students. So loving the feedback for there. So I'm gonna go ahead and stop sharing and let y'all take over.
Okay, let me tackle the last one first. What are the requirements, publishing and teaching in your position? Okay, so if you don't know that, right, go ask somebody. We're not in the business of reinventing the wheel when it comes to, hiding these things. So you can go now and ask your undergraduate supervisor, or as a graduate student, ask your supervisor what it is I do. I try to pull back the curtain for everything that I have done with my graduate students, because there is a potential that they will want to do this. So that said, for us at the University of Florida, we teach 2 courses per year. Okay? One in the fall and one in the spring for research active people. We are expected to produce about $300,000 in externally funded research per year. That should, at the budgets, come up to about 2 to 3 publications per year. Okay, basically $100,000